How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, we always bring you in, man. We get the latest on what's going on around D3, and we got quite a few headlines here today.
It's a busy weekend.
Yeah, and we're definitely going from the most serious to the most feel good. We talked about this yesterday, and Trey touched a bit on the services that are being offered up there for tenants of the Liberty Bank building, but a homicide there on 24th and Union.
Yeah, Sunday night, murder in the neighborhood. Reports of shots fired. More information has come out pretty quickly in this case, and so at this point now, the Seattle Police and the King County courts have started to identify people who are involved. We know that Michael Darden is the name of the man who died. It happened in his apartment in the building. It appears to have been a family dispute, so it's something that bled out into the streets when the suspect, who was taken into custody and is being held now on for probable cause until his hearing later this week. His name is Deshaun Sanford. He's a 28-year-old. So it was a family dispute, is the way the Seattle Police are describing it at this time. We've got a life lost. We have a lot of people who, were scared and traumatized in the neighborhood, but mostly we have a family that has suffered a huge loss, and so hearts go out to those people, and hopefully it's a family can recover together and come back from all this.
Yeah, and let people know. I actually even knew about it initially because I follow you on Twitter, and you would tweet it out, and I was like, "Yo, this is like close to home up there."
Yes,
and followed up on it, and yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I read in your article the second homicide of the year, right?
Second homicide of the year. The first one was also seen very widely. It got a lot of attention. It was the Seattle Police Department's killing of a burglary suspect. This is the first homicide not involving a so-called police killing. After a year of deadly gun violence in the city, and it's a big issue for the region, big issue for the nation, really. Guns and gun deaths have been a big part of the pandemic story also.
All right, we got a second overlay here. Looks like the SPD on the OIG have made some recommendations. Looks like SPD is going along with it now.
Yeah, this is a story that can get picked up and have people get confused and think, oh, gee, Seattle, lawless den of anarchy. But what's going on is after some recommendations, the Seattle Police Department, Chief Adrian Diaz has basically told police that stops for technical violations of traffic laws, stops for plate violations, stop for registration violations, and stop for things like bicycle helmet. The bicycle helmet laws are no longer going to be executed by the Seattle Police Department. Many people see that as a big step for equity. They know that the laws are inequitably enforced. They know the stops are not fair often, and it's been a big issue for policing. In some ways, you can look at this as the Seattle Police Department, though, getting in front of maybe more legislative, maybe tougher crackdown on that kind of behavior. One example would be Philadelphia, where they actually have codified a law and restricted the way the police department can go about this. At this point, it's been a departmental decision by Diaz sent down to the folks on the streets. And yeah, we should see a reduction in that kind of activity from Seattle Police. It's a big deal for the homeless communities here in Seattle too. There's the Crosscut reported, I think, almost 4 years ago now, a long time ago. We've known this, that it's been hugely disproportionately impactful to homeless communities to have the bicycle helmet laws enforcement. Those tickets have hit homeless people much harder than they've hit anybody else, which is just adding to some of the cycles of poverty and problems we see around that.
Yeah, one thing that I glanced there was that a lot of these infractions, they disproportionately impact people who would have trouble paying.
Sure, and it's a terrible cycle. The court systems and the legal system's full of this kind of thing, though. Warrants and bonds and paying off, and one just almost like the student loan industry. Once you get involved with paying money in the legal system, it can really start to add up for folks who cannot pay. And so, there is hope that this will end that cycle somewhat. However, you're still going to have to register your car. There's going to be the parking enforcement officers are still going to get you when they go around the scanners, and the state's still going to enforce it. So it's not anarchy.
And these are no longer grounds for a stop.
For a
like
stop.
you could get stopped for something else and then later
Sure.
on be cited, but they can no longer stop you because of that.
Sure. Like when I go on ride-alongs in the East Precinct, it's not uncommon for, just like in the movie, where a cop will see a headlight out or something wrong with a car and make a stop as a kind of just an opportunity to start to interact with somebody they're suspicious of for other reasons. That stuff happens all the time. One area that is still going to happen a lot, and this is something I think the community is really going to have to wrestle with, is around DUIs. Impaired driving is something that police officers recognize through a series of things like lights off in the middle of the night and those kinds of things when you're driving. But they're also can be disproportionately used as an enforcement, or at least as an excuse to stop. So, where we draw the line on cutting these kinds of tools out of the Seattle Police Department's tool set, that's going to be a real question.
All right. Next one up here. This is big story for us, really for the whole city and everything else. The Proud Boys, the SPD Rules, and really it's kind of coming out that now it's not even the ruse, it might be the potential cover-up or information not necessarily coming out to the public.
Yeah, the ruse case is something that's, it looks like the mayor's office, from the last things they've said publicly about it, seems to be very interested in moving this through existing kind of channels. There's an effort to look at the 2020 protests and the police department's reaction to it through the Sentinel reports and doing a kind of a deep dive that way. I don't know how much of a call really can build. There's not a real mechanism right now built for a wider investigation of everything that's going on. And that's really the bureaucratic trick that these things can fall into. And when the challenge for journalists and the challenges for the communities to figure out, okay, so what channels at City Hall can you push this kind of thing through to really try and dig deeper? Or do you just take it that the guy from OPA now is part of the administration and we're going to move on to other problems?
Yeah. What was the response to this up there? Your home turf, Capitol Hill.
I was surprised that it wasn't stronger around 11th and Pine. And I think one of the things we do have to remember is that tenants and renters move a lot. A lot of the neighbors around that area are still there, and we hear from them. A lot of them, though, have already moved a long time ago. It's been, we're already coming up on 2022, being a couple of years removed from the summer of 2020. And so I think some of the people who most viscerally felt it as far as the neighborhood impact, they've already left the area and they're no longer living there. Other than that, though, there are people who remember it and remember the details and are still asking for justice and some kind of response from City Hall about what happened to the neighborhood. I don't know at this point whether these reports, these Sentinel reports that are based around big events, are really going to do much more than document and make an interesting PDF for history that we'll embed in an article someday and look back and go, man, those were crazy days, as we move on to the next crazy things that happen around Seattle.
Yeah, I think that the issue that we have, I think a lot of journalists and a lot of everyday people have, is it just seems that everything has not come out. And even 1 week ago, if it wasn't for a leaked email, this would have been like probably buttoned up. It would have been like, well, the OPA report is deficient, doesn't have this and that, everything else, the cycle would have turned. And then boom, here comes an email, here comes a whole, the EOC on alert, parks, SPU, everybody, and so it's like, kind of like what else is coming out. Mm-hmm. And I think it's unfortunate. And if there isn't a mechanism in place to do additional investigation.
Yeah. And so I guess from our part, from the media's part, there are still documents now to request. I think everyone got a better sense of the framework for how this ruse worked, and that will probably present an opportunity for, and I'm sure a lot of these requests have already been made. The other opportunity is people. There are people who talked and who that testimony, it's funny how much of history is going to depend on the right people saying the right things. And I think even through some of the things we saw around, like say Donald Trump, we find out it doesn't really even matter if someone is willing to talk and reveal that also it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to find justice and find truth out of it all. But there are people who are involved in this, and people talk. People get in trouble. They want to protect themselves, or they want to present their version of history. And so there's also that opportunity, I think, as we move forward. But yeah, there's not the stones to be unturned are, they're not big ones, the little rocks here and there. Maybe someone will turn over the next big rock, but it feels like more it's going to be a lot of kind of pebbles as we move forward and trying to figure out if there's more that we can bring out into the daylight.
Yeah, no, it's wild. I mean, it's definitely not over with. We'll see what happens. Capitol Hill, your beat that has one of the highest population densities here in the city of Seattle. Lots of apartments. We'll put this slide up here. Mayor Harrell announced last week that he's pushing the moratorium forward until Valentine's Day.
Yeah, so this is an extension of a moratorium, or an eviction moratorium that's been extended already several times, first by Mayor Durkin. As cities buy time, they're putting these moratoriums into place because of people's inability to pay rent during the pandemic restrictions. How we stop and move off of a moratorium is, I think, the big question. Seattle is often positioned as waiting to see how it happens in other big cities. I'm not sure that's exactly what's going on, but that is one easy narrative, as New York, has ceased theirs, and we're looking at the results. It's not clear, if there's going to be a massive wave of evictions. It doesn't feel like that. A lot of people have been able to pay. Other landlords have received support and aid. Tenants have received some support and aid. So I think what everyone's hoping is that mix of all this kind of wild safety net is there, and that in the end, it's not a massive crisis when we finally lift this, and they're trying to do a soft end.
Yeah, I think that, they got this federal money too, and they're not, what I kind of get is they want to spend all that money here, or at least not send it back, and keeping the moratorium going, they're able to exhaust those funds.
That's possible. One trick or actual core of budgeting is to make sure you spend what you've been allocated, so you get it again. So that's definitely tried and true by every bureaucracy.
All right, let's see here. 22 bars and restaurants to look forward to.
Let's talk about something fun. Yeah, every year we look ahead and see the restaurant industry around Capitol Hill and the Central District is amazingly robust. If there's one thing about the pandemic we know, is we are not going to starve. We have a lot of restaurants. We have a lot of new cafes, and it's funny how many new places continue to open. I've covered a lot of closings, and we've lost a lot of favorites. But, more actually are opening because the opportunity is there. It's a business that is sometimes tough for the big companies to scale down to the corner, and to scale down to the flavors and things that we want in the neighborhoods. So yeah, lots of great things opening in the Central District. Midtown Square is going to be amazing, actually, as far as food and drink goes. I mean, you're going to have a Jerk Shack location. You're going to have the new home for the Raised Donuts shop. You're going to have a new home for the Neighbor Lady Bar. So that's a pretty cool center of activity there at 23rd and Union. That's got room for a lot of new neighbors up top. People will be moving in, and also some of the neighborhood restaurants and bars will have a new home, and then a couple new places also opening up. That's pretty cool.
All right, and one last one here. We said we were going to end on. We were going to go from serious to feel good.
Yeah.
There looks like there's a new Black-owned brewery that's opening up.
Yeah, you gotta respect. 23rd Ave Brewery knows modern branding. Where's your brewery? It's on 23rd Ave. 23rd Ave Brewery is a group of brothers. Mario Savage is the guy I talked to about their kind of quest to go from hobby brewers to doing the real deal this summer. They're going to be opening up at 23rd and Jackson. They've got a really small space that's going to be kind of a walk up where you can go get kegs and bottles filled and get cans and those kinds of things. But yeah, they're going to start making beer. It's going to be Black owned, Black made beer right here in the Central District. They'll join a community of brewers already kind of going. You've got Standard Brewing already in the neighborhood. And then in Capitol Hill, you've got folks like Optimism that are, indie making beer. And then you got the big timers like Elysian and Red Hook going on. So yeah, it's a pretty cool brewing community. The other big deal, of course, coming in the Central District is over on Cherry, where Metier, one of the most well-respected Black-owned breweries in the nation, is opening up a tap room that's going to open up supposedly next month. So that'll be a pretty cool addition to the neighborhood too.
We going drinking?
Yeah, let's go have some beer.
Yeah, and look, you're serious just like I am.
No, I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
Ready? What time is it?
I already know. All right, Justin, man, tell people how they can keep up with you.
Yeah, come tune in at CapitolHillSeattle.com 24/7, 365.
All right, Justin Carter, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.